Mark mentioned that Walmart has been the first to jump on this. They announced a few months ago they're developing a sustainability index with an academic group, including people like Dara O'Rourke. And they've announced to their 100,000 plus suppliers that within the next 5 years they're going to be asking them for this kind of information. And they said, and if you don't provide it, you will be irrelevant to us. In other words, they won't stock your product. I've seen the pilot that they're doing at Walmart. And right now they're asking companies for 4 kinds of LCA information. One is climate change impact throughout the supply chain and a product's life cycle. The second is total resource consumption, particularly non-renewables. The third is embodied energy, the total energy use over the life cycle of the project. And the fourth is a measure from public health called the disability adjusted life year, which means how many years of life do you lose to disability because of X. And you can calculate this for a product, particularly if it has emissions into the air that might, for example, create respiratory disease, or if its energy sources do, for example, coal burning power plants, or if it exposes workers or consumers to toxins and so on. So Walmart says this is just the beginning. I'm waiting to see what it's going to do, but I know that they're quite serious about it. They've invited the second disruptive information system I wanted to tell you about to help them bring this to market. This is a system called earthster.org. It's an open source supply chain analysis that looks at the total ecological impacts of a product over its entire life cycle, particularly through the supply chain. It's meant to help companies determine where in the life cycle of a product they can find the biggest change that will help them the most. Procter & Gamble uses specific methodology to ask what's our worst impact on global warming and determine that it was because you have to heat water to use detergents. So they've developed cold water detergents that they say work just as well. But that's a model of how a company can use Earthster for strategic planning. Earthster also is open source, so it establishes industry standards for the entire range of ecological impacts, which means you can now rank your product or their product against yours and see where a positive change will help competitively in this new ecological competitive marketplace. And you can also use Earthster to find suppliers who can help you make the changes that will create what essentially is a perpetual upgrade, where companies will be able to continually raise the bar by finding one ecological improvement after the other, and will do it now for a good business reason. I think that these methodologies resolve the old debate between social responsibility voices who say we need to do this because it's the right thing to do, and other ethical voices that say, no, our first duty is to shareholders. We've got to make a profit. If there's no business case for it, we won't do it. This, however, creates a business case for essentially reinventing everything, because every industrial platform, industrial process, the palette of industrial chemicals were developed by and large in an age before LCA, before we had a good metric for ecological impacts. And now that we have that metric, and now that it's going to be a marketplace factor, every product needs to be viewed through this lens and rethought. And this is going to open an incredible entrepreneurial opportunity, I think, going into the future for people who can, entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors, who can come up with better alternatives for doing just about everything in business today. As one industrial ecologist told me, you know, frankly, nature doesn't love any man-made product. We've got to think of a new way of doing it. Finally, let me say that this is going to go global. Earthster is being translated into Spanish and Chinese. Good Guide is launching Good Guide UK in 2010 and is going to go into the EU, phasing in after that. And if you want to know more about Earthster, or about Good Guide, I have more in-depth conversations with Dara Work and Gregory Norris, who did Erster, at morethansound.net. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. And part of our follow-up will include links and more information on that, on those resources. I have a question for you, Dan.
Sure.
Radical transparency. That was a key theme in your book, Ecological Intelligence.
Sure.
And if I hadn't said it before, I encourage everyone to look at this book. It really is a kind of blueprint for what we're doing at People for Earth, which is to create a standard for companies to benchmark their sustainable risk and a standard for investors to evaluate companies against that. So I encourage everyone to do that. So the question is, radical transparency, like economic theory, assumes that people are rational. But we know that people are not always rational. They will buy a product because of positive childhood associations. They like the packaging, or they bought it last time out of habit. So how much of an impediment will human behavior be to your notion of radical transparency and the changes that will result?
Well, you know, as someone with a little bit of background in neuroscience, I hate to tell you, Mark, but no decision is entirely rational. That's an ideal type. The emotional systems of the brain are inextricably woven into the cognitive systems. And when I talk about Joey and his disgust, I think that really is what's going to drive this marketplace, the contrast effect between products that all of a sudden consumers realize have something not very admirable about them, even disgusting, and those that don't. That's going to be now, I think, the decision rule for winning and losing in this new game.
Right. And the second follow-up question to that, and then we'll turn to Paul Hilton, is do you see any clash between radical transparency and proprietary information? When doing the research for your book,
sure,
company representatives raise proprietary information as a flag?
Absolutely. And the big question that actually is being solved on Erster is how can companies reveal impact data but retain proprietary information? And this is the question that Erster has been designed to resolve. So I think there is a way through that, not a problem.
Great. Well, thank you.